Have you ever felt the weight of the gaze of a woman living without a man, not in the sense of abandonment or loneliness, but in the sense of an almost ethereal presence, resisting the world and its charms? She is not an absence, but a force, a silent force that paradoxically generates a powerful magnetism. What is it about her that disconcerts men? What hides behind her autonomy, her distant gaze, her uncompromising freedom? This is not a woman who flees male company, but a woman who does not depend on it. A whole woman, already complete and therefore does not need the world to define her. Within this freedom lies a mystery. The woman who lives without a man becomes an untouched land where no one can plant their expectations. She does not bow, does not submit, and that is what makes her energy so irresistible. The man who observes her sees her not as she is, but as he wishes she were. A projection of his own fears, unfulfilled desires, and unfaced shadows. He observes her not for who she is, but for what he fears he isn't. She is everything he hasn't yet had the courage to embrace within himself. And so he desires to possess her without even knowing why. There is something deep and uncomfortable in the independence of a woman who seeks no one's approval. She is the reflection of her own freedom, and her strength lies in the silence of her soul. There are no appeals, no strategies to seduce. Her attraction is natural. It is the simple fact of being. She doesn't depend on the gaze of others to assert herself. And this is what transforms her emptiness into a power that everyone around her perceives, but few understand. She is a mystery, and the mystery cannot be touched without being undone. The woman who lives without a man is, in a way, a poem written between the lines of loneliness. She doesn't need to scream, she doesn't need to clamor for attention. Her strength comes from her silence. She is self-sufficient. And therefore the attraction to her is not rational. It is not a logic that a man can understand. It's the pure energy that emanates from a woman who has learned to live for herself, who has built herself in her own essence. And when a man looks at her, he sees her as an enigma, and the enigma consumes him. What he doesn't understand, he desperately desires. When a man encounters this woman who lives without a man, he feels an attraction that goes beyond the surface. He sees her not just as an independent woman, but as a reflection of everything he cannot or does not want to be. Carl Jung tells us about projection, a psychological process by which the male unconscious projects onto a woman everything he does not recognize or accept in himself. And this is how obsession is born. The man desires to possess what he does not understand, what he cannot control. He sees in her what he would like to be, self-sufficient, free from constraints, unafraid of being alone. The problem is that the man does not see her as she is, but as he would like her to be. He projects onto her his needs, his insecurities, his shadow. He wants her to be his solution, his escape from what he has not yet faced within himself. He sees her as a symbol of freedom, not as a real woman, with her complexities, her doubts, and her humanity. She becomes an idealization, a desire impossible to touch. She becomes the woman who, by not needing him, challenges him in a way he doesn't know how to handle. This projection, however, is not conscious. The man doesn't know he's projecting. He simply desires her. And it is in this desire, fueled by the shadow, that the attraction becomes more intense, more addictive. He wants her not because she is what he needs, but because she represents everything he's afraid to be, free, whole, complete. The woman who lives without a man is the projection of what he doesn't yet have the courage to face. She challenges his ego. She challenges his certainties. She is the representation of a force he can't control. What the man doesn't realize is that she isn't there to fill his voids. She doesn't submit to this idealization. She doesn't bow to his unexpressed desires. She exists, pure and uncompromising. and doesn't need his approval to be. And that's what makes her energy so dangerous and attractive. She reflects his deepest fear and desire without even trying, and that's the power of the woman who lives alone. She doesn't need anything to be powerful. Her energy is the result of her own integrity. She is free, not because she chooses to be, but because she has no other way to be. There's something about a man's desire for this independent woman that's deeply revealing. He desires not only the woman herself, but what she represents, a reflection of his own shadow. Carl Jung said that the shadow is what we deny, what we hide, what we fear being, and it's this shadow that a man projects onto her. The woman who lives without a man, who refuses to submit, is the mirror of everything he hasn't yet integrated into his own psyche. She's what he avoids looking at within himself. She's what he fears and at the same time desperately desires. But desire is treacherous because it's born of projection. The man doesn't see the woman as she is, but as he idealizes her. He desires her not because she's what he needs, but because she's the projection of everything he can't accept in himself. She represents the freedom he doesn't know how to achieve, the independence he hasn't yet had the courage to achieve, and it's this distance that attracts him, because she carries within her a strength he hasn't yet understood. He sees in her a part of himself that he has repressed, and in trying to possess her, he is trying to possess his own shadow. This relentless search to understand what she represents is what makes him obsessed. He feels she is the key to something missing in his life, something he cannot reach but knows must exist. He wants to see her yield. He wants to see her need him, because that way he could finally fill the void he feels. But the problem is that, in trying to do this, he not only loses her, but also loses the opportunity to confront his own shadow. He loses himself in idealization, in a desire to control the uncontrollable. A woman who lives without a man does not need to be possessed, because she already is, and it is this certainty of his own essence that makes the man so obsessed. He cannot possess her, he cannot dominate her, and this corrodes him from within. She is the enigma, the reflection of what he fears to see in himself, the freedom, the integrity, the strength he has within, but doesn't yet know how to let blossom. And so he continues in an endless search, because he doesn't understand that what he desires in her is not her, but his own liberation. The woman who lives without a man is not just existing, she is in a profound process of individuation. Carl Jung spoke of this path as the journey to become who we truly are, without the masks the world imposes on us. And this woman who refuses to submit to the gaze of others is walking this path of self-discovery. She doesn't need a man to define herself. She has already defined herself. She doesn't seek anyone's approval because she has learned to validate herself internally. Her energy comes not from external validation, but from a deep connection with herself, with her own essence. The woman who lives without a man, then, is not lonely. She is whole. She is a complete being who reconciles with her own shadows, who integrates her light and darkness. She is unafraid to be who she is, with all her complexities and contradictions, and it is this authenticity, this freedom to be, that makes her so powerful. She doesn't need to fit into molds or stereotypes. She is simply who she chooses to be, and this choice is what makes her invincible. The man who observes this woman often feels a deep discomfort because she doesn't fit his expectations. She doesn't submit. She's not there to please him, and this destabilizes him. He doesn't understand that the woman who lives without a man isn't against him. She's not in a power struggle. She's searching for herself, for her own truth, and seeing her so whole, he comes face to face with his own incompleteness, his own insecurities and fears. What he doesn't understand, he fears. What he can't control, he desires. However, this desire is a reflection of his own need for self-sufficiency, for emotional freedom. He sees in her what he hasn't yet found within himself, the courage to be whole, without surrendering to the world's expectations. The woman who lives without a man isn't a threat, but an inspiration. She challenges him, but not to destroy him. She challenges him to also face his own journey of individuation, to discover himself, free himself from his own shadows, and become the man he is destined to be. There is a depth to the silence of a woman living without a man that few can comprehend. This silence is not empty, but filled with strength, like a vast field that at first glance seems inert, but beneath the surface pulses with life. She doesn't need to speak loudly to be heard. The man who approaches her feels he is before something much greater than her words or gestures. He feels he is before an imperturbable force, a presence that needs nothing to assert itself. Her silence is her greatest weapon, and it is in this silence that she finds herself in her entirety. This silence is not passive. It is not an abandonment of life or interaction. It is, in fact, the purest expression of self-sufficiency. The woman who lives alone does not submit to the outside world. She does not allow herself to be molded by the expectations of others, nor by the pressure of a system that tries to define what she should be. She finds the space to be herself, far from the incessant search for validation. And in this silence, she finds her strength, her energy. It's the power of being whole without depending on anyone else. And paradoxically, it's precisely this silence that makes her presence so irresistible. The man feels she's more than a physical being, more than a body to be desired. He feels she's a soul that lives without asking permission, without needing approval. The woman who lives without a man isn't empty. She's filled with her own essence, her own story, her own desires and choices. She doesn't live to please, but to express herself truthfully, without constraints. This silence isn't empty, but full of authenticity. It's a form of profound communication, one that goes beyond words, beyond gestures. It speaks to the unshakable confidence she has in her own existence. The woman who lives without a man doesn't need to be what others want her to be, because she's already enough. She's at peace with her own solitude, and this peace is what makes her unattainable, mysterious, and above all, powerful. Her silence is her freedom, and this freedom is what fascinates. The man who observes her cannot figure her out, and that is what makes him want more. A woman who lives without a man doesn't seek. She chooses. Her journey doesn't involve the desire to be chosen, to be conquered, or to find someone to fill a void within her. She is already whole. What she seeks is not confirmation of her worth, but the choice of a partner who shares her integrity, her freedom. A woman who lives without a man knows that her happiness doesn't depend on being accompanied. She becomes whole on her own journey, and that's what makes her so attractive. She doesn't lose herself in the search for validation. She finds herself with every step, with every decision she makes for herself, and it's this choice, this power not to chase, that makes men so attracted. Because what she reflects to them is not the desire to be possessed, but the desire to be worthy of their presence. She doesn't need a man to feel loved, but she chooses one who sees her as she is, without expectations, without pressure. She knows that her energy cannot be forced. She is the woman who walks confidently, knowing that her choice is a reflection of her own freedom, not a response to need or loneliness. The man, then, is attracted to this autonomy, this lack of need. He feels that she doesn't need him, but that she chooses him, and that's what makes him obsessed. The woman who lives without a man doesn't submit to the power game. She doesn't need to humiliate herself to be noticed, because she is already worthy of respect. Her strength comes from her choice to live freely without being tied to anyone or anything. And when she chooses, she does so with an emotional clarity that transforms everything around her. She is the woman who doesn't lose herself, doesn't adapt to what others want. She simply chooses to be who she is, with or without company. This Choice is what makes her unattainable. She doesn't chase, she doesn't wait, she chooses, and when she chooses, she transforms not only her own life, but also the life of the man who observes her, because he realizes he can never control her. She is too free to be possessed, and it is this freedom that paradoxically makes her so irresistible. The man feels that she is everything he can ever have, and it is this feeling of loss that keeps him chasing her throughout his life, searching for what cannot be attained. The woman who lives without a man, in the end, is the one who truly chooses. Her freedom, her peace, her strength. What if the truth about this woman who lives without a man is much deeper than we imagine? It's not about being alone, but about being whole. She is the mirror that reflects everything you haven't yet had. The courage to see in yourself. The woman who doesn't chase but chooses is the embodiment of the power that resides within all of us, waiting to be recognized, accepted, embraced. The mystery lies not in her solitude, but in her ability to be so complete in her own company that no one, not even life, can tear away her essence. She is the echoing silence, the emptiness that fills everything around her, the quiet force that transforms without needing to be seen. The woman who lives without a man is not defined by anyone. She's not a product of someone's need, nor of the search to fill something missing. She becomes all that she is because she chooses to be exactly what she was always destined to be, free. Free to look within and find an entire universe there. She doesn't expect to be seen, but when she is, it's a reflection of her own power, something that can change the perception of anyone around her. She doesn't need approval to exist, for her existence is an echo of her authenticity, and this echo reverberates, resonates in those who observe her, until she becomes a living memory, a reminder of everything you could be if you had the courage to walk beside yourself. Look at this woman, and you will see, in truth, your own lack of limits. She's not asking for anything. She's just being, and that's what makes her so irresistible. It's not a power play. It's not about conquest. It's about the quiet freedom of being who she truly is, without needing permission. That's where true beauty lies, in the ability to be yourself without fear, without constraints, without compromise. It's the freedom that's rightfully yours, the energy that can't be imprisoned. And as you observe this woman, you realize she doesn't need to be understood. It just needs to be felt. Now imagine what would happen if you also lived with this freedom, if you stopped chasing and started choosing. The decision isn't in the desire to be loved, but in the recognition of the love that already resides within you. Look around you, and when you look in the mirror, realize the woman you see is the woman you choose to be. And when you choose, the world no longer has dominion over you. If this feeling resonated with you, if you felt the flame ignite in your heart, perhaps it's time to continue this journey. Like, share, and comment, because freedom begins when you allow yourself to feel the truth that is already within you.